After 2 decades without a military, Haiti is revitalizing its forces. But as recruits sign up, many are asking if the country even needs them. I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmaker is Haiti's new army. Haiti's army has had a notorious reputation. When the U.S. occupied the country 100 years ago, it was used to suppress a nationalist insurgency. Later, dictators Francois and Duvalier used it to oppress popular dissent. Then the Duvaliers were ousted from power and the army disbanded. Its critics pointed out the Caribbean country had no sworn enemies and funding was scarce. Those critics still exist today. But the UN is winding down a 13-year-long peacekeeping mission. And despite having a 15,000-strong police force, the Haitian government says it needs a military to patrol the border for contraband and continue rebuilding the country after a series of natural disasters. I'm joined now from London by Margrethe Edmond. He's the charge d'affaires at the Haitian Embassy in the United Kingdom. From New York, policy advocate Jocelyn McCullough. He served as executive director of the National Coalition for Haitian Rights. And from Miami, Eduardo Gamarra. He's a professor of political science at Florida International University. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Margrethe Edmond, if I can begin with you, sir. Haiti wanting to staff up its army again, wanting to relaunch its army again. Is this the right time?
Of course it is the right time, because let me start off by saying thank you for the invitation, and refer to you to the constitutions of the Republic of Haiti. It is said in this Article 263, there are two different forces in Haiti, the armed forces of Haiti and the national police. Therefore, it's a matter of legal decision. It's a right of the president to fulfill or to implement what the Constitution says. It's a wish of the Constitution. Therefore, we need to go ahead and implement the Article 263 of the Constitution.
Yes, Mr. Edmond, undoubtedly, every country should have its army and has a right to. But my question is it the right time, given that Haiti hasn't had a lot of stability in recent years, and Haiti hasn't had a lot of central government control over all the people with weapons in the country?
Let me respectfully disagree with you on that. The armed forces existed before. Unfortunately, that armed forces had some very troubling past. But it is very important to consider that a country which its fabric has started with armed forces, because we had a revolution and we defeated the French army then, and we became a nation. Therefore, the nation of Haiti was funded by the military, by the armed forces. If you even look at our armor corps, you will see cannons, you will see weapons. I mean, this is in our DNA. Mm-hmm. I understand some people may have some concerns with regards to the time, if it is the right time. But I must tell you that all sectors, and I can even refer to you, to all presidential candidates of the last election, all of them presented the return of the army and their program.
Good points.
All of them.
Okay, good points.
Therefore,
yes.
there is a national consensus on the idea.
Okay, so there's national consensus. Haiti deserves its army. Jocelyn McCullough, the man makes a good argument, doesn't he? The time is right.
No, I don't think he makes a good argument. I think it's really a lot of nonsense. First of all, I would challenge the notion that there is a consensus on the need to rebuild the Haitian army. The second thing I would say is that right now what the government is doing is essentially mounting a little token force of about 500 people or so. And that means that, yes, there are going to be a lot of takers because there's a lot of unemployment, and the idea being that, well, if you could get employed and so on, then you will be able to make a living. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Haitian armies in the last 40 years have essentially preyed on the people of Haiti, not provided the safety and security that a military would provide. And I'm afraid that what is in the works, in fact, are elements of the same thing. The government does not have the funds nor the resources to even pay its current police force or to maintain its police force at the current level. I can't see how the government is going to be able to maintain and grow an army in Haiti at this point. I think that Haiti, there's a lot of things that Haiti can do to provide security and safety to the nation. One of the things that it needs to do is to really strengthen the police force, strengthen the judiciary, make sure that people refer to the law, to the courts, as means by which to resolve their problems.
Okay.
And to some extent, Haiti needs to move into the directions that essentially make it palatable for people to invest in the country.
So let's take
the Haitian army is not going to do that.
Let's take one of those things that you said and ask Bokshi Edmund, sir, why don't you strengthen the police force first? You've got 15,000 policemen, men and women in the country. Strengthen that police force.
Let me tell you something. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Makala. He's a great human rights defender. I know him for a long time. I've been following his work. But let me tell you, sir, you are talking about an old army. You're talking about the past. But now there is an issue here. You're talking about the national police to strengthen it. The police, I should give credit to the National Police Force for the last 14 years. They have been very effective, even though with some lack of resources for them. But they have been very great, effective. But there's another issue here. We need to understand that our national police was not trained to do military work. Our national police is a civil force. It's a civil force trained to maintain law and order.
If I could intervene,
but now we're talking about.
I think we're talking
about. No, listen to me. No, listen to me. Listen to me. You have to listen to me, please. Now we're talking about protecting our borders, our maritime borders, our land borders. We're talking about serving, and when it comes to natural disasters, something that we have every single year.
Okay, good point. So let me then ask Jocelyn.
Because we cannot continue to talking about strengthening
so Jocelyn, why not have both?
While we are neglecting.
Certainly. Good point, Bokshi. Jocelyn, why not have both? Have the police force for your internal boundaries and have the army for contraband, for the borders, to help with natural disasters.
Absolutely.
Maybe if there was an army,
that's the main
Jocelyn.
objectives.
Sure, Jocelyn, maybe if there was an army during the earthquake, maybe fewer people would have died. Jocelyn?
Absolutely. That's my point. That was my point.
Tell me why, Jocelyn.
I'm sorry, but this is not the case. Whether or not you had an army, the earthquake would have caused as much damage as it did, because the people who died under the earthquake is because of shoddy construction in Haiti, and the fact that the government has been so dysfunctional that it has not been able to maintain.
No, this is not true.
Can I finish, please? It has not been able to maintain even a modicum of authority over the building codes and so on. So let me finish.
Just let me add
the Haitian army would not. The Haitian army
Mr. Edmund, give Jocelyn a second.
Have,
give him a second. Jocelyn, go ahead.
Yes. The fact is that you do need a group of people who are ready and trained to respond to emergencies. And obviously, given the fact that every year tropical storms hit Haiti in one form or another, then you need to strengthen that kind of civil service. Unfortunately, that civil service institution has not been strengthened. So there should be more resources provided to that component.
Okay.
Second thing is,
unfortunately, Mr. Makala, you have not seen the white book, the white paper that was written and prepared by the Haitian government with the help of the organization.
I don't have to see the white paper. I don't have to see the white paper that's been written down.
This is the main objective. We are not trying to rebuild an army with guns, with tanks, and so on. We're trying to rebuild an army where youth will be at the service of their own country. It is a civil service
and
to do.
And you both disagree vehemently.
We are not trying to do that. It seems to me this is the wrong way to understand the project.
No, and you made your point really well. Okay, so now, Eduardo Gamara, I don't want you to feel left out. I wanted you to come in a little bit later on because you're not as, I guess, you're not as polarized as the other two are on this issue. And I wanted to give them an opportunity initially to set out their arguments. And a few minutes in now, you've heard what both gentlemen have had to say. Who's making the better argument? Who's more right here, Eduardo?
Well, you're putting me in a difficult position, but I'll simply tell you that I think both are making very, very strong points. Let me begin, for example, with some of the points that Mr. McCallum made from New York. The reality is that the Haitian armed forces have a terrible historical record. And the big fear has always been that refounding a military in Haiti will bring back the specter of an abusive military, a corrupt military, and a military that overthrew a democratically elected president. So that specter is always there. At the same time, it's very important to note that over the last 14 years, Haiti has essentially given up its sovereignty to a foreign force called MINUSTA, which, and I've done major public opinion polling in Haiti over the last 7 or 8 years, and there is no more unpopular force than MINUSTA. Haitians have not liked the presence of a foreign force to provide them with public security, with border security, and to perform precisely the functions of responding to natural disasters and the sort. The reality also is, as the ambassador was pointing out, that the national police in Haiti has performed remarkably well. It is today one of the, in terms of popular perception, it is one of the most highly rated police institutions in all of the Americas, and that's really quite a remarkable statement to make. Haiti is not as insecure as most people believe it is. If you go into certain neighborhoods, certainly it is, but overall Haiti has done fairly well, and a lot of it has been the result of good police work and the presence of MINUSTA.
Right.
What was absent from the discussion is the fact that MINUSTA is leaving Haiti, and it's leaving Haiti, and there will be an enormous vacuum there, which the national police on its own cannot fill.
Okay, so let me ask Jocelyn McCullough then. Jocelyn, who's going to fill that vacuum if not an army?
Well, let us remind ourselves that the peacekeeping forces were deployed to keep peace, and if we're correct that Haiti is one of the safest places and has been one of the safest places, and in that sense, then what we're looking at here is that MINUSTA has been, I mean, the peacekeeping forces of MINUSTA have been, in fact, superfluous, to a great extent. In fact, Haitians would call them touristas rather than peacekeepers, because they have, in fact, rarely intervened except in the early years, back in the period 2004-2006, at the request of the government of Haiti, because they were dealing with what, in fact, were police issues in the capital city of Port-au-Prince. But the peacekeeping is not necessarily an issue that in fact, the Haitian military is going to be able to keep, and so on. First of all, and second of all, let us remember that we're looking at a token force. We're looking at a token force of about 500 people. MINUSTA had at some point about 10 to 12,000 people.
Right. This is not 500 people.
About
it is
1,500
well
also
said.
civilian. Police forces.
No, sir. This is not 500 people. It is well said. This is a project that we are starting with 500 youth. This is not a force going to be 500 people a bit. What you should know, I mean, it seems to me Mr. McCallum did not get your question because he didn't answer it. The vacuum that will be left after MINUSTA. But we need to understand. Now,
so what is the vacuum that's going to be left after MINUSTA?
Not only listen to me. Not only we have to deal with natural disaster every year. We need to protect our borders.
MINUSTA did not get itself involved in responding to natural disasters. That was not his mission.
But you made your point.
The mission of MINUSTA was to maintain the peace.
Mr. McCallum, you made your point. Let me make mine now, okay? So it is very important to understand that there is a responsibility of the legitimate authorities to start thinking the steps to be taken once MINUSTA has been leaving the country. because they are in the process. We understand, and as I stated before, the National Police Force has been very effective for the last 14 years, but we need to understand that the National Police Force was not trained to carry out those kind of jobs.
Okay.
They are here to maintain law and order.
And you made that point
Therefore,
earlier, sir. Undoubtedly, yes.
I need to put emphasis on it because sometimes we need to forget that.
Okay,
we
duly
tend to
noted.
forget the idea,
Emphasis duly noted.
you know?
Okay, certainly, emphasis duly noted. I want you all to listen to what the head of the UN peacekeeping mission to Haiti, Sandra Honore, had to say very recently, and I'll ask you something off the back of it. Have a listen.
Thanks to the collaboration of the United Nations Blue Helmets and the Haitian National Police in promoting security, the essential bases to reinforce the state institutions have been established, and the President, Jovenel Moïse, and the Prime Minister, Jacques-Guy Lafontaine, have shown evident signs with regards to their programs for additional reforms.
So I hate to say it, but it sounded like a mission accomplished speech. Eduardo, did it warrant that?
Yes, it did. Of course it did, because obviously the UN wants to leave on a very positive footing, and they want to leave saying that when they leave, there will not be that vacuum. And the reality is, however, and I think the most important point is that Haiti has been often described as a failed state. I have never classified Haiti as a failed state, but as an incomplete state. And you know, to be able to perform the functions of the state, one of the things that Haiti has to do is to be able to have full control over its national territory. And whether that is by fully expanding the role of the police and making it a truly national police, because really, frankly, outside of Port-au-Prince and maybe Cap-Haïtien, the police really does not perform in the rural areas. Haiti does not have any kind of ability to enforce borders, and so it's not only a problem of out-migration to the Dominican Republic, which becomes then an international issue, but also the flow of goods, of contraband and so on, that severely affects the Haitian economy. There is no ability of the Haitian state to have full control over its national territory. So I can see the logic and the argument for establishing a military and establishing a full presence to establish full control. Right. What I would say, however, and I think that this is where the Haitians have done some things right, and maybe it was because of the presence of MINUSTA and the international community. But if Haiti is going to pursue the construction of a new military force, then it has to make sure that it is a trained military responsible for you know, with full vetting of human rights, right. That it doesn't just simply tap into the old guard, that this is a modern professional institution, and that isn't, you know, enamored of toys, but that in fact is performing more National Guard kinds of duties.
Let me pose some of those questions.
Those are you know, certainly, the duties of.
These are good points, right? National Guard sort of duties, well trained, tremendously slick, if you like. Not just some sort of ragtag army. Bokshe Edmund, as the charge d'affaires in London, as somebody who's a former ambassador, somebody who represents your country, can you really give guarantees that given Haiti's history, this army will not be used against its own people, and also that this army won't be so weak so as to become a target for maybe militias in a coup d'etat where they get all the benefits of being the army, because there's a new institution that allows somebody to wield power in the country. Can you give those guarantees?
The most important thing, I would say yes. I think the most important thing is sometimes we tend to forget. It is, most of the time, the armed forces we had in the past, it's unfortunate they had a very bad record sometimes on human rights. But now we're talking about the present and the future. Certainly, the civil society we have now in Haiti is even stronger. Therefore, we understand they are the watchdog. They will get involved in it and they will follow the process. But why sometimes we tend to forget the other armies in the region that has had a very bad record as well. But they was not dismantled. They reformed them. Now they put them under the control of the civil authorities. Why in Haiti couldn't be done like this?
Right.
But it is very important now if we want to start over and we started to build a new armed forces. It's very important to involve, to get everybody's involved in it. It is a national thing. It is not something that the government or the authorities are trying to do against another group. This is not the case.
Okay.
What I will tell you, 20 years ago, or recently 10 years ago, the resentment against the return of an armed forces was very high. But nowadays, taking into account the experience of minister, me as a citizen of Haiti, I'm not talking here as a diplomat right now for this moment, for what I'm going to say. As a citizen, I'm not going to say that the minister did not help, and did minister help Haiti to some extent, but the record, the legacy they will leave behind sometimes is questionable.
Okay. Jocelyn, are you willing to give them a chance?
I think Haitians, given a chance, will do their best in order to build a nation that they can be proud of. The problem that we have here today is the fact that the government of Haiti is absolutely dysfunctional, is very weak. It cannot even pay teachers to educate.
Okay, Bokshit Edmond and Jocelyn McCullough, as well as Eduardo Gamara, it's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Coming up, critics say it has some of the toughest abortion restrictions in the United States, but has Arkansas's new law crossed the line? And we speak to this EU official, who some are calling Apple and Google's worst nightmare. In the U.S. state of Arkansas, a widow must consult her dead partner's family over funeral arrangements. Now the state has extended such decision-making power to a fetus. If the ACLU is correct, it means a woman could only get an abortion with the father's permission. What's more, the organization says because the law has no exclusion for assault, a victimized woman could only terminate her pregnancy with the okay from her rapist. In a moment, we'll debate whether that interpretation of the law is correct. But first, we have this report by Shoaib Hassan.
One issue remains at the center of the women's rights debate in the U.S. Abortion. And while this protest was at the national level, there is a new local flashpoint in Arkansas. The latest fight is over a proposed amendment to the law governing the medical procedure. Pro-abortion rights groups say the amendment means women cannot get rid of unwanted pregnancies without the consent of the father, even if they are rape victims. And that it legally complicates procedures, effectively making it impossible for women to have abortions in Arkansas. The American Civil Liberties Union has filed a case challenging the law in the district court of the state. The Guttmacher Institute, which focuses on reproductive health research, says it's just the latest law in Republican-led efforts to curb abortion rights. According to the institute, legislators have passed 300 restrictions on abortion across the U.S. since 2010. As of 2016, 22 states have 6 or more restrictions, marking them as hostile to abortion rights. In 2000, Arkansas had 3 restrictions, marking it as less restrictive. But as of 2017, it's risen to extremely hostile with 10 restrictions. Kim Hammer, the Republican state representative sponsoring the bill, says it's intended to protect the aborted fetus from being disposed of as medical waste. But pro-abortion rights activists don't buy that. Shoaib Hassan, the Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Washington, D.C. by Renee Bracy Sherman. She's a spokeswoman for the National Network of Abortion Funds, which fights barriers to abortion access. And from Fort Lauderdale, Lauren Cooley, an editor at Red Alert Politics and also former staffer at the Susan B. Anthony List, which campaigns against abortion. Thanks, both of you, for joining us. Looking forward to this discussion. Renee, let me begin with you first. What do you think of Arkansas's new law?
Well, thank you so much for having me. You know, I think that this law is just another opportunity that the government is trying to make abortion even more inaccessible and ban it outright here in the United States. We have seen thousands and thousands of anti-abortion restrictions keeping us from being able to access basic health care. You know, those of us who've had abortions, we don't need the government telling us who we need to get permission from to have this medical procedure. So the government is saying that it's regulating communication between families. When we have abortions, we are talking to the people in our lives, our loved ones, our families, our partners, to make this decision. And sometimes we're just making it ourselves. The government should not be telling us that we have to talk to certain people, particularly if it is someone that has raped us. That is just an egregious move by the government to kind of keep us from being able to access basic health care, abortion care.
Okay, so Lauren, firstly, tell me why you disagree with Renee, and tell me if you think maybe the law's made a mistake by not being clear enough, and there is some space for interpretation that a rapist has to give permission for an abortion. Go ahead, Lauren.
Sure. So I think there were two main intentions for this legislation. The first was respect for life, right? So when someone has an abortion, before this legislation was put in place, my understanding is that the fetus could be pretty much dumped out in the trash with all the rest of the medical waste. And so for people like myself who believe that unborn children are still a very precious and valuable life, this legislation was intended for the body of the fetus to be disposed of in a more respectful manner. And then the second intention was that we give some respect and value to paternal rights. And so a lot of times we have this discussion about abortion like it's just between the mother and the child, but in reality, when anyone dies, that impacts more than just the mother, and that includes you know, an unborn child. And so the idea was to give paternal rights some say to the father of a child that might be aborted. And so the point in this is that every time that you create legislation, there's always going to be a loophole, or there's always going to be something that comes out in the wash that wasn't the main intention or wasn't even thought of. And I think that's where you get to this idea that you may have to consult your rapist to get an abortion. I think that's absurd. I don't think anyone would ever intend for that to be the main point of the law or the point of the law whatsoever. And so I think that's something we can discuss, and it's something that definitely needs to be looked at because we need to have compassion for people who are considering abortion, especially when it comes to a case of rape. And so that's, to me, I think the important thing to understand is that the intention of the legislation was not to protect rapists. In fact, it was actually to give respect to unborn life and to fathers.
Okay, so Renee, both of you are coming at this from different perspectives. Do you agree with Lauren that perhaps the intention of the law didn't quite match with some of the potential ramifications and problems down the line?
No, the intention of the law matched exactly with it, and it is to keep people from being able to access abortion care. When I had an abortion at 19, you know, I talked about it with my partner, and I don't believe that the government should have to kind of be part of that conversation. That is for us to make that decision. The government should not be legislating who we decide health care with. You know, all of these restrictions, all they are designed to do is to keep people from being able to access health care. Those of us who've had abortions, 95% of us do not regret our decision. We come into the decision fully understanding what we're doing and that this is actually the best decision for us. The majority of people who are having abortions are already parents, so they know what it's like to be a parent and have decided that at that time that they don't want to grow their family. And so at what point are we going to actually trust women? What point are we going to trust people who are having abortions to make the best decisions for themselves and for their families?
Right.
I think I know my situation best and not the government.
Okay, yeah. I want to draw to your attention something that was said by the Center for Reproductive Rights very recently. Lauren, I want to ask you about this because they said, you know, with this package of laws, we're definitely seeing a new creative and especially cruel attempt by Arkansas to make abortion more difficult, if not impossible, for women to access and to stigmatize and demean them in the meantime. So again and again, we're hearing, Lauren, that it's not so much about the law itself or the minutiae of the details of the law, whereas they do actually have problems with the law itself, but they see it as a package. They see it as a kind of, as an ever-shrinking space of women's rights, state by state, and it's particularly bad in a place like Arkansas. That's how they see it. Lauren, tell me why you disagree with that.
Well, I think the number one thing is this healthcare, or is this a discussion about life, right? And so, first of all, I don't think this is healthcare, right? This is making a decision that you're going to terminate a human life. You're going to make a decision and an action that is going to deter someone from being born and being able to live
put forward by a doctor.
No,
abortion
it's not
healthcare.
healthcare. And
I've had
abortion
one.
is not healthcare.
I saw the nurses and the doctors that are there. It is healthcare.
Just because it is a medical procedure does not mean that it is
You may
healthcare,
disagree with
because
it.
the woman, unless a woman is dealing with something.
Just a second, Renee. Let Lauren
so
finish
unless
her
a woman
sentence
is dealing with something where it's a threat on her life, unless a woman's dealing with something where having a fetus is a threat on her life and it's actually a medical procedure to save the mother's life, then it really isn't healthcare. And I think this is a rhetorical talking point that the left often uses. And so to say that this is a restriction on abortion, like I said, first of all, it's respect for the unborn life. It's respect for fathers who are basically involved in this situation. And so when you say it's not the role of the government, I'm sorry, but the role of the government is to protect life. And so if you want to have an abortion, then you should be able to go and talk to your partner about it. You know, you said that you did that, but that doesn't mean that everyone is. And so to me, it makes complete sense to say that the father of an unborn child should be able to have some type of say in what's going on.
And for me, it's really interesting seeing the cultural fault lines at play here. We talk about left, right, and usually, especially in the United States, on the left, they're saying we want more government. On the right, we're saying we want less government. On this discussion, for me as an outsider, as the man from the moon, the roles seem to be inversed in some way. But Renee, let me ask you, do you have any sympathy for the fact that maybe in a place like Arkansas, in a democracy, the vast majority of people might want things that are very different to what you want and might see the situation very differently when it comes to, whereas you say you're pro-choice, they say they're pro-life, you're essentially pro-abortion and they're anti-abortion. Do you accept that they need to have their voices heard?
So I'm actually from the Midwestern part of the United States, the heartland of the United States. As are many Americans, and actually the majority of Americans do support access to abortion. It's not about whether or not you would have an abortion yourself. It's about whether you'd stand in the way of someone else having one. And so we want to make sure that everyone is able to make that decision to become a parent or to grow their family without government standing in the way. You know, if they would like to continue the pregnancy, I totally support them. And I want to make sure that we have the safety net programs that are there. We have our government that is cutting healthcare right now, cutting Medicaid, which is healthcare for poor families. So where is the culture in life in that? I have so many questions for my colleague about, you know, how are we standing up to make sure that low-income families are able to access food? How are we making sure that, you know, they aren't being shot down in the street by police? Like, these are things that families are dealing with every single day, and that is not really the culture of life in the United States.
Okay, so ask her directly, right? Okay, I'll pose that. Lauren, so Renee's saying if the government really wants to protect life, those should be the priorities, not this. Lauren?
I think the government does a lot to protect a culture of life outside of the womb. And that's not, first of all, that's not the discussion that we're having. I'm happy to have it, but I just want to point out that's another rhetorical point to say, well, yes, it is a termination of life when you have an abortion, but let's talk about how people who want to protect life in the womb don't care about life once it's born. Well, first of all, that's a ridiculous claim. Conservatives and people who are pro-life actually are some of the most largest charitable givers. They give to charity sometimes 50% more than liberals do. And so if you want to talk about this left-right paradigm, the right believes in less government
Lauren,
in fiscal areas, and so that people...
Where'd you get the 50% from?
Where did I get the 50% from? There's several different surveys, especially general census surveys that have come out throughout the years. I actually wrote an op-ed about this about a week ago on Red Alert Politics, where people can dive into the statistics there. But in many different cases, the right is actually doing more charitable giving of their own money, and the left decides that it's the government's job to do the charitable work. And so it's not necessarily to say that the left is more compassionate or the right is more compassionate. So when you're talking about life outside of the womb, to me, it's a very cheap shot to say that people who are pro-life don't care about others once somebody is born. In fact, that's the whole purpose of, back to what we were talking about, this legislation was for quality of life, respect of life, and then to give better rights to parents, especially paternal rights.
Even, and the point these others are making again, even rapists, because the law doesn't exclude them. Nevertheless, Lauren, last year the Supreme Court struck down something that was, very anti-abortion. It was seen as a victory for pro-abortion advocates in the United States. What Arkansas is doing right now, 2017 is very different to 2016. What Arkansas is doing right now, would you like to see replicated at the federal level? Do you want to see more of this across the country?
Well, I mean, I think there are definitely things that need to be fixed with this legislation. I came out right at the beginning and said, of course, we don't want to be empowering rapists in any way, shape, or form, and we need to have the utmost sympathy for people who are victims of rape. So I think there's definitely some flaws in the way that the Arkansas laws is being applied, right? If you can fix those bugs in the issue, yeah, I definitely am for respecting life when it comes to the way that if there is an abortion that takes place, respecting the way that the fetus is disposed of. I don't think it's medical waste. I don't think that it's garbage or trash. It's a human being, and it's a life that we need to mourn. So I don't see why that's something that's so controversial.
Okay, this is something you mentioned twice, so let me get Renee to address this idea that fetuses are sort of thrown away as garbage and trash. Lauren said it twice, so Renee, you were shaking your head each time she said it, so why don't you respond to that?
I mean, there was just so much misinformation. I'm not really sure to where to begin there. But I've been to abortion clinics. I've had an abortion. That's actually not how it's done. But what I really actually want to get back to is the fact that, reproductive justice activists and pro-choice activists are trying to ensure that everyone is able to raise the families that they want and that they are able to put forward. So we're fighting to make sure that folks have access to minimum wage.
Even if that means getting rid of life that is unwanted.
We are trying to make sure that everyone is able to earn living wages so that they are able to raise these families that they have. We are trying to make sure that everyone has access to health care. That's why we're trying to save the Affordable Care Act, which is making sure that millions of people, particularly those who are on Medicaid, are able to access health care. We're fighting to make sure that all families are able to thrive. And some people will decide that abortion is the best decision for them when they're having a pregnancy. Some will continue their pregnancies.
Yep.
We want to make sure that everyone is able to make that decision without government intrusion and without having to leave the state to access health care.
Certainly. Let me ask you again, and it's similar to what I asked Lauren. This is what's happening in Arkansas. We've used it as our launching point to discuss something far broader. Renee, what do you think is happening at the federal level? Do you think that what Arkansas is doing is something that is going to be replicated elsewhere? Is that the national trend?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen thousands of anti-abortion restrictions sweep the nation. Several states are trying to ban abortion at 6 weeks before people even know that they're pregnant. And so we're seeing that they're trying to pass these laws in the states and then kind of sweep across the nation and try to basically undermine the right to an abortion, and I'm sure it will come to Congress at some point. They're patently unconstitutional, and so we're hoping that the courts will see it that way and will make sure that we are able to access abortion care without all of the barriers that already exist.
Okay, Lauren's shaking her head as well. Lauren, tell us what's behind that head shake.
Well, I mean, the thing that you said is that a lot of people are looking to see abortion banned at 6 weeks, but you don't mention that at 6 weeks, that's when a heartbeat starts in a fetus. That's when you see the first signs of human life. And so it's not like this is just some random number of weeks that's being thrown out. There's scientific proof behind when a heartbeat starts, and that's at 6 weeks. And the other thing is the reason that abortion laws are becoming more strict is actually because more and more young people are becoming pro-life. In fact, we have the most pro-life generation in American history with millennials, believe it or not. And I think that comes down to social media and the digital age that we live in. I can't scroll through my Facebook news feed without seeing a sonogram or a picture of an infant or finding out that a friend is pregnant. And so it becomes more real for a lot more people because of that.
Okay, so Renee, more young people are against you. They don't agree with you, according to Lauren. Final word from you, Renee.
Again, that's not true. Again, that's not true. Support for abortion has actually stayed steady for many decades. The majority of people, 7 in 10 Americans, support access to abortion. Everyone loves someone who has had an abortion, and so they just need to recognize that, politicians are actually harming the people that they love when they're seeking health care.
Well, Renee Bracey-Sherman and Lauren Cooley, I'm really happy that we had 2 young women on the program who disagree very deeply on the fundamentals, but we were able to cover a lot of ground, and especially from this outside perspective. I thank you both for allowing me to probe and prod as we looked at this very divisive issue in the United States. Renee Bracey-Sherman and Lauren Cooley, thank you very much for joining us. Google and Apple were fined billions of dollars after the EU cracked down on monopolistic practices by some of the world's largest corporations. And this woman is leading the charge. Margrethe Vestager is the EU's antitrust czar, and it's her job to enforce the union's vision of a fair and competitive market for all stakeholders. In recent years, that's seen her go up against Google, Fiat, Apple, and Gazprom. The companies have been accused by smaller rivals of unfairly using their financial clout to force out all competition. Vestager agrees, and it's led to her charging Apple $13 billion for unpaid back taxes. And Google has been slapped with a $2.4 billion fine for doctoring search results. Margrethe Vestager joins me now from Brussels, from the headquarters of the European Commission. Thanks so much for joining us, ma'am. When people hear that you go after Gazprom, they think, yeah, perhaps the Russians might be a little corrupt, might be a little dirty. But when it comes to Google or Apple, the response is altogether different, and there's much more shock and surprise. Tell me why.
Well, I ask myself the same question because no matter your company, no matter your ownership, no matter your nationality, when you do business in Europe and do good business in Europe, well, of course you should play by the rules. And I unfortunately find that it is no matter the nationality or the size. You sometimes find that businesses, they cut corners and they do things that are illegal after our rule book.
You've hurt the pockets of some of the biggest tech giants in the world. These are Silicon Valley prophets in many ways. Everybody gives them a free pass. They're not going to roll over and die. We're hearing appeals are ahead. They're fighting back. Are you prepared for that?
Yes, of course. We never ever compromise on the quality of the work we do here, because this is a union built on the rule of law. So obviously we are very, very thorough. We go through the evidence, the fact of the case law, to prepare the strongest possible decision, because obviously we are prepared for fighting back for appeals in our court system, but we never, ever compromise on the quality of our casework.
There was a lovely write-up of you in the New Statesman. They called you the most powerful woman in Brussels. Is that true?
Well, you know, literally here power comes from the people. Europeans have decided over the decades that this portfolio should be a very strong one. A lot of competence is here because we want a fair single market where you compete on the merits. And that power is, of course, from the fact that 500 million Europeans expect you to do the job.
Are you winning?
Well, that of course remains to be seen, because when a case is appealed and a company goes to court, then of course it is for the court to decide. But we do prepare ourselves so thoroughly that we find that we have the strongest possible case.
Have you paid a price personally or professionally, given that you've gone after some very powerful people?
Well, I think that still remains to be seen. What I get is the privilege of having a very, very meaningful job, because I think it is important for people to see that no company is so big that they are above the law, that just as well as every sort of standalone, small, medium-sized company pay their taxes, so should the big multinationals do that. And that makes a lot of sense to me also personally. So I find that so far it has been a huge privilege to be allowed to work in this area.
With Apple, it was back taxes. With Google, it was antitrust. If I look at, for example, say Wall Street, people would readily expect that you're going to have some greedy bankers who are going to want to bend the rules. But when it comes to tech companies, are we in a place where the law and regulations are playing catch up with the complexity of these operations, so it makes it harder to catch those who are fudging the books or bending the rules?
Well, that is a very, very good point. Two comments here. I think basically when you sort of strip it naked, it's the same thing. It is still about greed. You want something by cutting corners, or fear of being sort of driven out of the market. But the tools that we need to catch it, they have to be more and more refined. So obviously we keep sharpening our tools. We get new competences in data mining, in managing huge quantities of data. And that, of course, is for us a challenge. But so far, actually, I think that we're up to it.
And if you'd allow me a broader political question, just before I let you go. In a time when we see rising nationalism on the continent, and sometimes the ugly side of the nationalistic coin, where we have people who don't want globalism, integration, don't want immigrants, don't want their markets opened up, they want to be more protectionist. Does it make your job more difficult?
Well, no, not my job as such, but I think it makes us all consider how trade, how an integrated world can be beneficial for more people. Because I think part of the reason for that reaction that you're quoting is exactly that people feel left out. And if you have this feeling that your society has turned into a business and you've been fired, well, no wonder if you get first frustrated and then angry. So I think there is a lot of listening to do to make sort of the integrated and globalized world work for people and not just for the selected few. And I think my job is part of actually doing that, so that you see that also the globalized multinational companies, they play by the same rule book as you will have to do as a maybe medium-sized standalone European company.
Margrethe Vestager, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us. That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Gata. Next time, we look at new claims that the UAE has been hacking Qatar's media outlets, sparking the GCC crisis. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.